Hey y'all, I'm Hannah, and I recently undertook a huge makeup collection declutter. A lot of y'all have been asking to see what my vanity looks like and how I'm organizing and storing my makeup collection now that it's decluttered. So that's what I'm going to show in this video. It's basically a full collection before and after. I want to be clear that the vast majority of the makeup that I own, the vast majority of what I kept, and the vast majority of what I decluttered is makeup that I only own, that I only ever owned, because I review makeup on YouTube as part of my job. Owning makeup, even the makeup that I end up decluttering, helps me do my job and helps me earn a living. But I've decided that in my personal life, in the day-to-day, I want to keep a small enough collection that I can actually see and consider everything every time I'm doing my makeup. If you'd like to hear more of my feelings on makeup ownership and makeup declutters on YouTube, then click through to my recent video on that topic. I'll put it in the cards and in the description box. But for now, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. So we're talking about my personal space up in my bedroom, the corner of my bedroom in which I store my makeup and do my makeup on a daily basis, like when I'm not doing it here on camera. Before this year-end declutter, that space had gotten completely out of control. And this is the moment to show you the shameful footage and pictures of how it looked a couple of weeks ago before I started decluttering. In theory, it's a beautiful little corner of our room, but in practice, it had become an absolute disaster area. And of course, there are a couple of problems here. There are a couple of things going on. One is that it's not organized and put away, right? It's messy. It's not just that there's too much makeup. It's that the makeup is all over the place and the skincare, and it's all mixed together. And I'm not the tidiest of people. I do sometimes let my spaces get like this and then I reset them. But I don't live happily with it like this. I wasn't happy with this. It was sort of bothering me, and it was also interfering with my ability to comfortably sit there and make use of the space. I would say that the mess you see here is partly a function of me not setting aside time to tidy up and organize, but largely a function of there being too many bottles and jars and cans and compacts and pencils and just bits and bobs for the space. There's just more stuff than will fit elegantly in the space, and so it gets out of control like this really quickly. Even in all of this chaos, you can kind of get a sense of how I was trying to store my makeup at this time. So in the leftmost drawer of the vanity, I had all of my lip products. I stored them all together. So it's lipsticks, lip glosses, any kind of lip anything, lip pencils, but they're all jumbled together just in a couple of boxes. And it was really hard for me to find what I was ever looking for in that drawer. In the middle drawer, I was keeping all of my most used products. So complexion products of every kind, color correctors, concealers, foundation, primers. I also had my mascaras in there, and I had some lip treatment products mixed in there, and for some reason, eyeliners as well. And then the drawer on the right-hand side is where I had all of my cheek products. So blushes, highlighters, bronzers, I kind of think of them all as being in one category. This drawer is completely overflowing, and I was also keeping my hair pins and hairbands in there. Looking at these before pictures, I can remember so clearly how much I had kind of stopped using any of my blushes in particular, and I love that area of my collection. But actually, this applies to lip products too. There were so many of them and they were so poorly organized that I just had stopped even going there. You know, there was like too much chaotic energy, too much confusion, and making a decision about what to pull from the blush drawer or what to pull from that box of lipsticks. Making that decision was always a task that felt like it was going to be more taxing than it was worth, kind of, because there was no organization and I couldn't see what I had. More than I even knew, I think I was suffering from a lack of connection and access to my own beautiful things because there were too many of them and because they were so disorganized. So we did the makeup declutter in 6 parts, and there are 6 YouTube videos already up on my channel, each featuring one section of this completely out of control and messy collection. In every one of those 6 declutter videos, I decluttered more than half of the makeup. So more than half of my blushes, more than half of my lipsticks, and in some cases, way more than half. In the blush declutter, which again is like all of the cheek products, so blush, bronzer, highlighter, everything mixed together, powders and creams all together in one. In that declutter, I decluttered 48 products and only kept 17. In the lipstick declutter, I decluttered 45 and kept 31. But again, the 31 that I kept, that includes bullet lipsticks, lip glosses, also lip treatments, lip liners, like lip pencils, every kind of lip product. It all adds up to 31, which honestly still sounds like a lot to me saying it out loud like that, but it's a far cry from the, 75 lip products that I started with. I had fewer complexion products to begin with, about 35 complexion products overall, and I decluttered 20 of them and kept 14. So again, that's primers, concealers, foundations, everything that I use to make my complexion even and to deal with my redness. I decluttered my mascaras in their own little video. I had 12 mascaras, which is a wild number of mascaras for one person to have at one time, given how short the lifespan of a single mascara is. It's supposed to be only 3 months. I mean, I think a lot of people push it to more like 5-6 months. But even then, before I started my YouTube channel, I only ever had one mascara at a time. So this is a part of my collection that really shows how much extra makeup collects when you do this job. So I decluttered 9 of those 12 mascaras and I kept the 3 freshest ones. My eyeshadow declutter took place across 3 quite lengthy videos. I had to split it up. In the first video, I decluttered every freestanding little piece of makeup in its own separate package that is used on the eyes. So little eyeshadows in their own separate tubs or little mini compacts, really small eyeshadow compacts like quads, and also eyeliners and eyeshadow sticks. That was a particularly vicious one. I decluttered 51 products and I kept 19. My eyeshadow palette declutter was also ruthless. I had around 20 eyeshadow palettes. I decluttered about 15. I only kept 5. And I'm not sure of the exact count on single eyeshadows, little single eyeshadows in magnetic pans, which is what the third eyeshadow declutter was about, but it was the majority that was decluttered. You can just see it in the footage, right? I decluttered most of them and just kept one little palette of perfect jewels. I also decluttered some things off camera, like, brow gel, odds and ends, random bits that were lying around, things that I only have like 1 or 2 of, and one had just, almost kicked the bucket. And so I just made that decision without featuring it. And I decluttered my skincare off camera too. It wasn't really like a thorough declutter in the way that the makeup one was, where I was deciding to literally say goodbye to some skincare that I hadn't used up and give it away. What I did was I just retained the skincare that I'm actively using right now. So everything you'll see on my vanity in the skincare spot in the after footage is skincare that I'm using either in the morning or the evening every day or a couple of times a week. Everything else, I either put it in my empties if it was empty, decided to give it away if it was almost new and I didn't want to use it, or I put it on like a backups shelf and I'm going to cycle it in as I go through the skincare that's there being used. I also found some storage spots and methods for some things that have been cluttering up. For example, my vanity bench. I had been keeping a basket there to put things to give away in, but it was taking up a lot of space and it was creating a lot of energetic and visual clutter there. So I put the giveaway box into one of my dresser drawers. It's still close to hand. I can still access it easily, but I can close the drawer and put it away. The only thing that's left out on my vanity bench is a box of makeup that is actively being tested for review right now. And I switched from an open box to one with a lid to reduce the visual clutter. Okay, it's time for the big reveal. Here's what my vanity looks like now. I moved my little skincare shelf to the left of the mirror, honestly, just to have some variety in my life. I like to move things around and mix things up. It just makes everything feel a little bit new again. And with the exception of my jewelry box and a little brush edit in a jar, the vanity surface is completely clear and all of the makeup is put away in the 3 drawers. Side note about brushes, I do have more brushes than you see here in this picture. I'm keeping some of them down here so that I don't have to carry my brushes back and forth all the time. And I also do tend to let some of them get dirty and then cycle them through. I really like having just 1 cup of brushes there on my vanity at a time. Again, I'm all about reducing the visual clutter right now. The insides of the drawers aren't particularly organized. I mean, they're not organized within an inch of their lives. They're not organized in a container store sort of way. The idea was to reduce my makeup collection to the point where I could kind of spread everything out in the drawers, and everything just has its own little spot on the surface of the bottom of the drawer. So when I look into the drawer, I can pretty much see everything. This is definitely true in the eyeshadow drawer, which is now the drawer on the left. It's also true in the lipstick drawer, which is now the one on the right. It's true of the blushes, which take up about half of the center drawer. It's a little bit less true of the complexion products. They are a little bit packed in like sardines, but those are the products that I have the easiest time using. I don't feel like I need to have that kind of visual access and openness in order to be actively using all of my primers and concealers and foundations and stuff, because I know them really well. I touch them every day and I go through them. So they have the narrowest little space, and I think that that's going to be okay. Let's go through drawer by drawer. So on the left, the eyeshadow drawer, everything's really like rattling around in there. I mean, there is a lot of space around my stuff, and part of me is like, I need to get containers or boxes to store them in, to separate them, to categorize them. But over the past week, I have realized I love it like this. I open up that drawer and I can literally see every palette, every individual eyeshadow, every eyeliner. I don't feel overwhelmed with decision fatigue. I feel like I'm at a very manageable little eyeshadow buffet, choosing which one I want to eat the most today. It's like a little dessert buffet, you know? I feel simultaneously stimulated to creativity and calmed by the fact that I know that there's nothing that I've sort of forgotten about, there's falling between the cracks, or I don't remember where it's stored. Literally everything that goes on my eyes is right here. The same is true of the blushes in the center drawer. Almost every single blush has its own little bit of drawer on which to sit without anything on top of it. I think it's just the e.l.f. palette, which is layered on top of my Kevyn Aucoin Neo highlighter, and the Chantecaille blush tube, which is kind of bumping around. Right now it's living on top of that Rouge palette, but nothing else is layered. Nothing else is covering up something underneath it. And since I organized it like this, already I've worn like 5 different blushes on 5 different days that I hadn't used in a couple of months, honestly. The complexion products on the right, as I said, they're a little bit more cheek by jowl. All of the tubes down at the bottom, like closest to the bottom of the screen, are mascara, brow gel, green color corrector, everything that kind of has that tubular shape, just all stacked in there together. But I haven't had any problem going through that and finding what I need. And everything else is pretty visible, even though it isn't laid out in the same way as the blushes. The least accessible stuff is probably the powders, which are in the back, but I'm always reaching for them because I know that I want to use them, so they're not getting lost in the mix. I also pointed out by picking it up that I decided to keep the Kosas concealer, even though I decluttered it in the declutter. I have ordered a replacement for my Rose Ink concealer, but until it gets here, I'm continuing to use this one from Kosas. And lastly, the lippy and bobby pin drawer. I'm also keeping my bobby pins, a hair claw, and some hair ties in here. And it's a pretty spacious drawer, which is good because I do tend to kind of throw my hairpins and hair ties in here willy-nilly. All of the lipsticks, it's mostly my bullet lipsticks that fit into this acrylic container, are in it. Because it's on the far side of the drawer from where I usually sit, I can sort of see everything laid out in the way that I would if it were sitting on top of my vanity. But I much prefer it like this because, again, I can close the drawer and it packs away that visual clutter. The lip liners and the lippies that are too long to sit in the acrylic container are just lying there, but they're organized in height order and there are few enough of them that I can look at them and take it all in at a glance. And just like the blushes, I found myself wearing lipsticks over the past week or two I haven't worn in a long time because I'm able to actually behold and actively consider everything that I own in this category every time I'm sitting down to do my makeup. I am keeping, as I indicated with brushes, some of my makeup down here in the filming studio, which is in the basement of our house. So my palette of single eyeshadows you might have noticed conspicuously missing, I'm keeping that down here. And I've decided that every time I use it to create content, to build a little custom palette, I'll take the custom palette up and put it in the eyeshadow drawer and treat it as one of my eyeshadow palettes for a couple of weeks. The Salt New York pans and their palettes are also down here. I have a feeling that I'm going to be grabbing those for comparisons, for color comparisons a lot. It just makes sense to me to keep them down here. A couple of pairs of false lashes, one of my eye primers, and again, backup brushes. It's like work stuff to me, you know, things that I imagine I'll primarily use to create content. It makes sense to have them in this workspace. And since I've simplified so much upstairs, I have storage for them down here. So I have this multi-layered rolling makeup case. This is the little middle section, but it has a top section that sits on top of it that has a handle that kind of unfolds. And it has a big base that is on wheels and rolls. They all stack up on each other and snap on with these locks. That whole thing used to be upstairs, and I used to be storing things off to the side and like rotating them in onto my vanity whenever I remember to do that. Now I'm keeping that down here and using it to store practical things that I'm retaining just for work. So that's it. I'm so pleased with the results. I mean, obviously that space upstairs has become so much more livable and usable, but I'm also happy to have a little bit of separation between like stuff I'm storing down here to use just for filming and makeup that I've actually chosen to be my own with these relatively strict rules about how much I want to keep and how special it has to be for me to keep it. It's gonna be interesting to see in the new year what this collection, like the starting point of this collection, does for my way of reviewing makeup, the decisions I make about whether to keep certain things that I review. I'm feeling currently very protective of the edited version of my makeup collection and the clarity in the space that I have, and pretty unwilling to let it slide back to how it was. I mean, famous last words. I'll be following my future career with great interest. I will definitely update you. I hope that you enjoyed seeing this video, the befores and afters. If you haven't seen the detailed collection by collection declutters and you'd like to see them, check the description box below this video because I will link all of them there. And don't forget to take extra good care of yourself so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.